and I teamed up with another alumni from Screen Academy, which is where I know Emma from, Lorna King, and she pitched this fantastic script. And when we were at university, and I just was like, wow, that's fantastic. But to do it at university without getting a bit of money behind it, I felt would do it a disservice ultimately.
Sure.
So we spoke again at the start of lockdown, and we decided to pitch for the BFI funding up here, Sharp Shorts. And we got shortlisted for that, and we went through development and we pitched in the end, but they decided it wasn't quite for them. But from there, we were like, well, we think it's fantastic, and we've done so much work and we've managed to develop it so much that we could go ahead and do a Kickstarter, which was the most stressful month of my life, pretty much.
Yep, they're never easy.
Very taxing.
So did you manage to meet the target that you set in terms of the
Yes.
money?
So we put a goal of £10,000, and we managed to go over. Actually, we got 11,500. So we managed to pay off like crowdfunding fees and stuff like that, and
Brilliant.
Keep the £10,000, which is fantastic. And we were kind of at that point of, are we doing this at the wrong time of the year, because like lockdown and Christmas. But it was an amazing experience. We managed to get a West End actor actually to come up the last 25% of our budget, which was absolutely amazing. It's Giles Turia he was in Hamilton.
Okay.
He was the original Aaron Burr, and that was just from Lorna tweeting him actually. And we were just like, what? Is this a joke? And no, when the pledge came through, we were just like, oh, so we've made our amount, and the rest is just like additional money, which is amazing.
That's amazing. I was going to ask, why do you think it was so successful? Why did you manage to do such a good job and go over budget? Because so many people that do crowdfunders never meet the target, even if their target's quite a relatively small sum of money. Yours is quite a large amount of money. Any insights now, thinking back, going, we did really well. We nailed that.
I think a big part of it came from the topic of the story. So it's about a young Black Scottish girl who has like these magical, supernatural, empathic powers, but they're being exploited for money to like wealthy white mourners and all that. And it kind of touched on a lot of like really nice, subtle references to like what's the worth of a human life outside of what benefit they give to you, kind of thing. And it drew a lot on from Black Lives Matters in a sense, but it's not like at forefront of it. It's not like we're trying to deliver a message. It's like a really cleverly woven story. And I think it was the right topic for the right time, kind of thing. And we knew that we had to like monopolize that, for lack of a better word. And because of Lorna's experiences being like Scottish Ghanaian woman in Scotland, like it just comes across as really authentic. And I think it reached a lot of people, and they were like, we want to see more of this kind of content and see it through the lens like of genre in particular. I think Jordan Peele has really made waves with Get Out and Us, and showing that genre and horror in particular is a really interesting way of exploring social issues. Like it always has been, but it's kind of, in my opinion, brought it back to the forefront of cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is often the power of just the moment, isn't it? As in like the right place, the right time. I'm sure you would have done brilliantly anyway, but it does help, doesn't it? If if you sort of line things up and have them ready to go, sometimes you just need a bit of luck or the right place at the right time. How did you get started in film originally? Yeah, going back to your first sort of.
It's been a while.
Sure. Well, you don't have to go into all the details, but
I'll paraphrase.
Yeah.
So I started back in 2012, 2013, and I just got to a point of I needed a creative outlet, and I couldn't draw at all. And writing a novel that kind of just makes me balk a bit. I'm just like, no. But I found I was really into film, and I loved stuff from Lord of the Rings and Pan's Labyrinth. And I was like, well, I'll give it a shot kind of thing. And I kind of got bit by the bug, and I made a lot of short films, and just learning as I went along, because I never went to film school originally. And it wasn't until 2016, I would say, that the short films that I was making, because I was like, right, okay, just gonna have to dig a little bit deeper into more personal topics and stories that kind of I can talk about from experience, that it really started to take off. And I've worked in the industry for 7 years now. And I just kind of always, from that point, knew that it's something that I wanted to continue with. So when I got into the Screen Academy Masters, the MA Film, I was delighted to have that year to just really focus on it. And I'm really glad that I took that time off working as well, and just managed to focus on honing my craft as a director, as a visual storyteller, and also meeting just a lot of fantastic people, from the screenwriting course, from the other people in my course. It was really handy, and it made me think, well, I want to help Scotland's indie filmmaking industry kind of grow, because it still feels a bit grassroots at the moment. It's not as established as London, for sure, but there's a lot of talent up here, and I'm happy to showcase that. I think it's fantastic, showing what we have going on up here, and I'd like to spotlight that a bit more personally.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's why I always ask, both when I spoke to Emma and Lewis, about how they see the Scottish film scene, the filmmakers in Scotland, the films being made up there, how they see it compared to, say, London, because again, it's in the UK, obviously London is sort of centre point, and everything seems to revolve around London, both in terms of shooting locations, themes, where stuff happens. But being so far away, geographically, but obviously Scotland's got its own identity and everything else. What does that give to filmmakers in Scotland that they can't do in London? Is it something that literally is just a different way of thinking, a different way of problem solving, different stories in your experience?
I think it's a different perspective, and it's a national identity that comes across as well. I mean, part of what we wanted to do with Her Midas Touch in particular was we didn't want to go to a very urban sense of Black lives and Black culture. It's it's not about crime or drugs or gangs or anything like that. And we kind of just, when we were talking about it, Lorna really wanted to get across her experiences, in particular growing up in the UK as a Black woman, which was really interesting, because I think there's a stereotype, and I do wonder sometimes if that sort of stems from where the content is getting made, because I'm not saying that Scotland's pure hoaching with Black people, because we're still really, really white and maybe not as multicultural in that sense as London, but there are these people here who want to tell their stories, and it's getting that point of like telling our stories, which I think is different and something that stems away from quite Glasgow life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, you know, crime and drugs and gritty social realism as well. And I think there has been a bigger push in the last 10 years to like try and expand it, and the content that's getting made here as well. And I think there's a lot of Scottish talent, and instead of it hemorrhaging south of the border, like we need to try and encourage it as much as possible and nurture it here in Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the very frustrating thing with say mainstream TV and mainstream film, that I think is one of the beautiful, powerful things about independent film, is for the reason you just mentioned, the fact that it's almost like over the last sort of 5-6 years, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, diversity in filmmaking, of people from different backgrounds being more prominent, both behind the camera and in front of the camera. But when it comes to, right, almost like the box. So okay, this is going to be a production with 50%, 60%, 100% Black actors. It's almost like, well, the story presented to them is, well, they're in a gang, or they're in an urban city, it's London, like that. And it's like, well, surely the whole point of, if you're going to focus on diversity from a film point of view, be diverse, not just what we've got a Black person, but that Black person is a drug dealer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there's lots of Black people, men, women, everything in between, that have degrees, that have studied art, that have studied history, that aren't drug dealers and or rappers. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you're going to be diverse, actually think about what that means and tell diverse stories. As I said, you know, that everyone in Scotland isn't like a junkie, or, you know, some kind of other stereotypical kind of sort of thing. And it's not always in Glasgow about gangs and knife culture and everything else. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the independent film, that they tend to, not always, but get that a little bit more than, unfortunately, maybe, you know, TV does. But they will catch up, you know. Do you want to sort of talk about some of the other short films you have made? Because again, I've been on your website or on your Twitter, and you know, you've got a lot of work. Do you want to sort of mention that, how they came about, and again, it's what is making an independent film like these days? Because with Netflix, with Amazon, and the way you do it, you know, there's tons of content out there, but it's time it's very, very hard. You know, it's always been hard for independent artists, filmmakers, but in some respects, it's even harder these days. What's your opinion on that?
It's difficult from getting to a point of, I'm going out and with my small network of people, I'm going to go and make a very low budget or no budget film. And it's that stepping stone to like actually take, like, you know, start getting funding, start getting recognition, is the point that I think a lot of people are deterred, particularly in indie film. Like, if you don't come from money, or if you don't automatically have like a lot of professional contacts, like, or even a film school education. Like, I started without going to film school, and I learned on the job, and I learned by volunteering on other people's like music videos and short films and stuff like that, partly in the hopes of just getting experience, but also seeing how other people worked. So like, when I was like, oh, I'm gonna go make a short film, kind of thing. I was just like not quite just winging it, still really quite winging it. So I think it's about nurturing the independent talent to try and get them into more professional settings anyway, and giving like these projects the support that they really need to take the next steps. I think that's the hardest part. But when I started, I kind of just, wrote some short scripts, and like if you look at my first couple of films, like they're not great, but they were fantastic for like having a learning curve, and really just like so many mistakes and pitfalls and having to navigate through that and just be like, oh, right, okay, so next time I'm not going to do that kind of thing. But I kind of always did it off my own back. And I think it was that drive that really pushed me forward. And I've been fortunate. My parents still think I'm probably mad. They're just like, yeah, okay, you're doing this. And professionally speaking, it wasn't until they kind of saw my name in the credits on TV that they were just like, oh, right, okay, this could work. You could do this kind of thing. Sort of that validation, because it's, it's quite unconventional and it's not easy at all. Yeah, I would say 2016 onwards, like I made a couple of short films. One is an experimental dance one called Control. And I also made that year The Distances Between, which is totally based on a breakup that I had a couple of years ago and that sort of long distance relationship kind of thing. Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't know about it. It's fine. But it was like getting to like explore a lot of stuff. It was really cathartic. And I just realized that I really liked getting people to follow my vision and being able to convey that to other people, because filmmaking is a very collaborative thing. And when you're able to communicate that and it all come together, it's like, it really is fantastic. So I kind of started to find my rhythm and my voice as a filmmaker in that regards. And I do feel that studying at Screen Academy and making my final film, Doppelparents, which is currently on its festival circuit, is like, it felt like it was really taking off in that regards. We did a small Indiegogo for that one. We raised about £2,000, and I thought at the time that was difficult, and I swore off, I'm never going to do a Kickstarter again, never going to do it again, this is shite. And then when it came to Her Midas Touch, I was like, all right, okay, right, I believe in this project so much that one way or another we're going to find the funding for it. Like, we have to do it. And I think you've really just got to have that conviction at the end of the day to like do whatever it takes, like beg, borrow, steal, in a sense, to get a project off the ground. And if you don't have that determination, like, or if you're going to wait for someone else to give you permission to make a film, then you're going to be waiting for ever, basically.
Of course, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because film, because it is a collaborative effort, but it's such an expensive collaborative effort, and it involves so many people, unlike painting or writing or even music to some extent, that people can kind of create things in their bedroom at home, but you can't really do that with film. Or, I mean, of course you can with a mobile phone, but results vary, It is a way, a thing, because technology has moved so much, and just the industry and everything else is still catching up, particularly with COVID, cinemas being closed and everything else. Does independent film, because it is such a feeder for people in the industry, new people coming through, new ideas and everything else, does it need help? Because essentially, you were saying that the way you did it, the way everyone kind of does it, is basically now it's kind of like, well, we've got to do a crowdfunder. A lot of people don't ever meet their target, or it's kind of borrowing money from family members or friends, and it's kind of like, hey, I've got another idea for another film. I just need another $3,000 or whatever. But it's almost like everyone's working for free, and you're doing this because that's what you do. But very few other industries work like that. Is there anything? I mean, maybe the answer is there isn't. But in your opinion, is there something that can be done or changed or made so people wanting to make short films or even feature films have another way of doing it, that they could at least pay themselves, if not become sort of millionaires? But it's just other than just kind of borrowing from people in the hope that one day you win a festival and get offered to direct, like, Disney feature or something.
Oh, it's hard to say, because sometimes conventional routes of, grants, they still feel like they're very much like there's gatekeepers in the way. And, a lot of time they're checking boxes, which is terrible to say, but they're like, oh, but we've got enough diverse project, like we've got enough diversity, we've checked that box, now we need some of this and some of that, instead of like maybe taking the ideas into real consideration. And even like for BFI, for Sharp Shorts, it was for, you're pitching for 15 grand, up to 15 grand, which I don't know anyone who would be like, you know what, I'm going to go under, I'm going to pitch for less. Because if you have the opportunity to pitch for that much money, then why wouldn't you? But there has been another initiative through GMAC up in Scotland, where they did micro budget film grant money for, I think, up to 6 projects. Her Midas Touch was considered for that as well. We spoke to them, but they just was like, you're a bit too ambitious. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Like, this was originally like for 15 grand. Like, we can scale it back, but at the same time, we don't want to undermine the quality of the film that we honestly feel like it could be. But because they had this initiative for projects to like pitch up to £2,000, I felt like it was interesting, because it was a way for people to get their foot in the door without the sort of pressure of like necessarily if you've got to deliver this massive thing. Like, the scale was smaller, but the ambition could, maybe not be as extravagant. But it is a good initiative. I think they're going to run it again this year. But overall, like, I think when starting out, it's having a good sense of like what is available to you, which is hard when you're starting out and next to no one, and there isn't necessarily a filmmaking community with you. But if you've got a mobile phone and maybe a sound recorder, like, don't let something stop you, but just work within the restrictions that you have. Because I self-funded too many short films, but I always made sure that the scale was manageable and that I could use stuff that I had access to, basically. So it's working within the limitations that you kind of have just to even get started. Because the problem with these funding grants, most of the time it feels like emerging talent, but you have to have a track record of making stuff. And it's just one of those catch-22s. It's just like, well, how do I get experience without being able to get the equipment and all that stuff? And it's hard. And to make a living from independent film is, if someone comes up with the answer to that, please share it with us all, because I think we all want to know at this point. Sure.
I can't. Well, I mean, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start the Film Dimension in some ways, but I'm still trying to come up with a solution myself. But
Mm.
it doesn't help when you've got big corporations, big companies like Amazon, who now don't take short films anymore, but the films that they do take, that they allow you to put onto their platform to sell, that they give you such a small, minuscule amount of money for that, and so many things are stacked against you. You know, that people can watch the first 10 minutes of the film and decide they don't like it, so you don't get paid anything. All of this stuff, it's just literally, it's like, it seems like it's the worst possible deal for the filmmaker. It's like you won't get paid here, you won't get paid here, you won't get paid here. If you do this, and this, maybe you'll get some little money. And again, it doesn't feel right. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel that they're, obviously, I mean, that's not their business model, and they ultimately don't care because they're huge. But there needs to be something, and I'm still trying to wrap my brains, and I'm willing to talk to anyone about it who's got ideas. Again, from your point of view, I find it exciting to speak to new filmmakers, new directors like yourself, because you are the people that are going to be making films in the next 10, 15 plus years. Where do you see, particularly British films, independent films, but again, it's like the fine line between what's an independent and what's a sort of mainstream studio sort of film. What do you see the future of independent film being there over the next 10 years? Is it looking good? Do you think there's lots of people out there who want to make interesting stuff?
It's hard to say. I think because of the current pandemic, it's putting a lot of pressure on cinemas in particular. And okay, not every short film is going to be shown in a cinema. Most of them aren't. But to take away like the platform that is best for viewing independent film, like film festivals, and having those venues, I think that's going to be a real issue if that's taken away from us, because there's so much content online that, like you said, if you get bored within the first 10 minutes, you're just like, okay, well, I'll just switch that off and I'll go to something else. I don't feel like people necessarily commit and like dedicate enough time to necessarily find new independent films. So I think that's where film festivals, like supporting those, is really important, and attending them in particular, and trying to get the word out as much as possible. I think our independent film, Glasgow Film Theatre, is not still able to operate, but it was holding on a bit longer than the likes of Cineworld or Odeon. I think they shut again for lockdown 27 pretty quickly. But it always surprised me that Amazon and Netflix, like, they're very like uninterested in new content from like new people and new voices, and they don't seem to support as much as they could. Whereas at the end of the day, what would it really cost them to put something up on their website? And then even if you're that fortunate, you've got to be able to cut above the noise of like, there's so much stuff out there, there's so much content, and it's difficult. I think the future is very unpredictable, but we've got to keep trying to support it and make content, because if we don't, then we're just going to get the same stuff over and over again, really.
Sure, no, absolutely. Do you think there's maybe too much content?
Yes, I do. As someone who's made far too many short films, yeah, I feel like there's too much content.
Because there, again, with YouTube and some other ones, there's arguably, maybe not for people that are, say, really into films, but there's loads of nonsense if you want to use that word, that could be could be an hour, 2 hours could be spent just watching videos of people on their phone just making nothing, and it's almost like, well, that's content, and that's noise over here, and that's competing with like a film over here that's taken a year to create and everything else. And then you've got people making films that maybe aren't that great. So it's very competitive at the moment, isn't it? But at the same time, you could argue that technology has enabled filmmakers to make a film from their laptop and edit it and everything else. What do you hope the process? When do you plan on shooting? Now that you've raised the money for Midas Touch, and do you have a sort of timescale of when COVID allowing, and what's your route for that? Is it festivals and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so at the moment, our current plan is hopefully to shoot in June, all going well. The nice thing about having raised the money ourselves and not having an obligation to any institutions that have given us money is we don't have any self-imposed, well, we only have self-imposed deadlines. We don't have any other obligations to fill, which is kind of double-edged sword, because you're just like, oh, we can just put it off for a couple of months.
Yeah.
We don't want to spend half our budget on COVID and testing because it's really expensive, but it's sort of like trying to find the middle ground of like having the discipline and being, right, we have to push forward with this. We're also, Scotland is getting really busy with lots of productions. It is picking up here, actually. I don't think it's ever been this busy before, maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff was on the back burner because of
I
so
guess
much halted last year.
Yeah, I guess it's probably the backlog of 2020 stuff, and so it's probably doubled. And again, you're hoping that this, once you've got this in the bag, the usual festivals, and hope that people recognize it, and you do either win something or at least get recognized for what you're doing, because it sounds brilliant, and I've seen the crowdfunder post you put up and everything, and it does look like it's going to be a very, very cool film. What's your dream scenario that happens with it?
Oh, dream scenario. I would love for it to do really well at film festivals, take home a couple of awards, screen at an Academy or a BAFTA qualifying festival, and maybe get a nod, if not a nomination from them. That would blow my brains. I would be like, what? I'd probably pass out from sheer happiness if that happened. And I think so many other people would be like, yeah, if that happened to me, that would be amazing. But it's one of those things of like, it's not often that short films that I've made in the past, I've been like, yeah, I think this could go the full hog, like I've made some good stuff, and I've made a lot of shite as well. But I have seen a steady progression and development. Like there's been an incline in my skills for sure. That it's kind of nice looking from the shit ones to the good ones. And you're just like, oh yay, progress. But sure. With Her Midas Touch, I genuinely believe that this could go the distance for sure. But I have to make it first.
Of course. Last question that I've started asking a few people, because I always find it interesting. If you could go back to when you were first starting thinking about making films, if you could go back and change anything in your path of everything you've done to this point, what would that be, if anything?
I would say just have a bit more confidence and like belief in yourself, because I didn't submit anything really to to a film festival until 2016. And I think it was that point that I was just like kind of confident that what I was making wasn't just self-indulgent, right? For lack of a better word. So it's just have a bit more faith in yourself, but just perseverance more than anything else. Like, it's the only way to get anything done. And like you said, there's so much content getting made that you're just like, oh, I'll shove it online, just I've spent a year on this thing, I'll just pop it online kind of thing. And just having that, no, like, I think this is really good and it's worthwhile. And to try and get into a few festivals. And a lot of people don't realize that there are free festivals as well, where you can submit films for free and start getting the festival laurels, and just people who actually care about film to watch it besides your friends and family.
Yeah.
Like, it's just sort of having that discipline at the end of the day, I think.
Sure. No, I agree, and it's wise words. I want to thank you for having a very interesting chat with us.
Oh no, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I was quite surprised because, like I said, never on Twitter for some reason. I was just like, "What's this message?" So, but also thanks to Emma. Like, I'm so excited for her project in her corner. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it does look special. No, and look, I would love to speak to you again after you've finished working on this project. Because again, I think that's also very, very special. And yeah, I can't wait to see it at a festival somewhere.
Oh, fantastic! Well, that sounds great, and it'd be nice if, hopefully, after COVID, me and Lorna to be able to speak to you, because I think she'd be able to talk about the project for hours.
Really? Yeah.
Sometimes I need to calm her down and be like, "It's okay, Lorna, just
sure.
Stop there."
If you can't be excited about your own stuff, then what can you be? But
exactly.
No, absolutely. No, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Oh, thanks. It's been a pleasure.